Watermark Books in Wichita, Kansas will be hosting Jenna Blum for her book Murder Your Darlings on February 7th at 5 p.m. See Watermark Books website for more information. And welcome to Tikiman and the Viking podcast. He is Tikiman.
I am H.B. Burlow, the author of the historical crime fiction series, The Ark City Confidential Chronicles, and The Wichita Chronicles, with more to come. He, of course, is the Viking.
I am William Bryan Johnson, author of Hell to Pay, The Dark Cry of Aristid, and Middle-Aged Man in a Trash Can. And we have a special guest.
I got to tell you something. I feel like I'm one of the kids from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I feel like we got the golden ticket today. All right, just saying. Jenna Blum, old friend of ours. Jenna is the New York Times and #1 internationally best-selling author of the novels Those Who Save Us, The Storm Chasers, and The Lost Family, the memoir Woodrow on the Bench, the audio course The Author at Work, The Art of Writing Fiction, and the World War II podcast The Key of Love. Jenna's fifth book and first psychological thriller, Murder Your Darlings, will be published by HarperCollins in January 2026. As CEO of the online interview company A Mighty Blaze, Jenna earned a reputation as a publishing industry community builder and innovator. As an on-air host, Jenna has conducted hundreds of interviews for the Blaze, from literary legends to new voices. She also interviewed Holocaust survivors for Steven Spielberg's Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation as a professional public speaker, traveling nationally and internationally to speak about her work. Jenna is based in downtown Boston. Yay! I'll get to that later, where she's the proud human of her black lab, Henry Higgins. We joyously welcome our old friend, Jenna Blum. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for letting me be here, Tikiman and the Viking. I was just sitting here feeling intimidated by you guys because this is my first thriller and you got it all nailed down.
Well, it must be the beard, but please don't grow one. Okay, it wouldn't work out. I'm just reflecting back in 2012 when I first met you. You'd already had Those Who Save Us had come out. I believe The Storm Chasers came out right the year before that. So you were already established. You had props. You had cred. Over the last 13 years, there's been an explosion, more fiction, the memoir, of course, A Mighty Blaze, which we'll have to talk about more in depth. What has kept you motivated? What has kept you going and expanding even beyond where you were?
I guess every author knows that in order to keep an audience engaged and to maintain suspense, you have to keep stepladdering up. You can't just keep doing the same old thing over and over. You have to keep the stakes rising and keep the tension rising. And I feel in some ways life is like that. My achievements are like that. I kind of want to go big or go home. And if I'm not trying new things and challenging myself, then I'm going to get a little bored. So I wrote my third novel after I left Wichita, where I lived for 3 and some years, where I had met you guys in person and had a whole Wichita-based family who I miss and will see soon. Yes. And then I wrote a memoir because my beloved dog Woodrow, who many of you knew, passed, and it was the best way that I knew to pay homage to him. But that was the first time I sort of broke genre. And then The Blades, which is an author interview platform, an online interview platform, was kind of an impulse that arose the first week of the pandemic when I watched COVID canceling all of my friends' in-person book tours. And I just said, oh, hell no. Throw up some social media pages that allow the new books coming out to be put all together in one place, and readers can come to these pages. And it's like all the little books are lights. And if we put them together, we make a mighty blaze, and readers will know where to go, and authors will be able to introduce their books. And that grew into this endeavor with 35 professional creative volunteers. And, we're going into our 6th year. It'll be our 6th birthday on March 10th. And we have interviewed literally hundreds of authors, from people like John Irving and David Duchovny, in case you didn't know he wrote a book, to, we've discovered a lot of the new debuts like Virginia Evans, who just came out with The Correspondent, and has had this great success story. So it has been a wild ride, you guys. You thought storm chasing was wild. This has been wild.
And
And
it's funny because, and this is something I'm sure Brian can address or talk about. In one regard, with the Mighty Blaze, you seem more like a teacher, and then talking about coming out with a psychological thriller being something new for you, you seem like a student. You're jumping back and forth between the two elements of learning, if you will.
I think Hemingway was the one who said writing is the craft in which nobody is ever a master. And I feel
Mm.
as though anytime you start a new book, even if it's in a genre you've written 100 times, or you can speak to this more knowledgeably than I can, but even if you're writing a series, you're still feeling your way into a dark room and figuring out like where's the furniture here and where's the doorway, where are the windows. It's a humbling thing every time, and that's just writing a book. And when you start into a new genre or some sort of new endeavor like The Blaze, it's really asking you to level up and be humble, and I think that's a really good thing for writers, because we also have to have the ego to think that what we say matters to other people. So I think it's important to balance out that colossal writer ego with colossal humility, and our own craft teaches us that humility.
why did you decide to do Murder Your Darlings?
Mm.
Oh, that is my favorite question. It's the pivot, right? It's like on Friends, pivot. Everybody's asking me about this. So I'm most known for quote literary fiction and the
Mhm.
character-driven fiction and language-driven fiction and historical fiction. And I have always wanted to write about writers. And some of my favorite books are about writer protagonists. I grew up reading Stephen King, and he has so many writer protagonists. Like The Shining is one of my favorite books
Yeah.
on movies ever. I reread it every 3 or 4 years. And Misery is probably one of the best descriptions I've ever seen of the creative process. And then you have Meg Wolitzer writing The Wife, and you have Erica Jong, who writes these sort of autobiographical novels that feature these female writers as heroines. I mean, so I grew up reading this, and I never quite felt I was allowed for some reason. Like I felt like maybe it was cheating or like cannibalizing my own life. And then I read Jean Hanff Korelitz's The Plot, and that is a contemporary novel. Jean is a literary fiction author who wrote this literary thriller, and it was so funny and so smart that I literally stalked her. Like I tracked down her phone number and I called her and I said, Jean, did you get any pushback from your publisher when you started writing thrillers? And she said, I just write what I write and let other people market it. You should write what you want. And I felt as though
Good
she
point.
had literally
Yeah.
given me permission to do this thing I always wanted to do. So I started to write Darlings, and I got to tell you guys, it is the most fun I have ever had writing a book.
Nice.
Did it put you in touch with a different side of yourself or your personality?
I think it gave me more freedom to be myself on the page, and I'll be curious
Oh,
to see
okay.
what readers come back with. Those who have followed my career thus far, or those who are coming to it fresh. If you have read my book so far, you'll probably notice a slight tonal difference. I really just thought, Hemingway said, sit down and open a vein. That's all you have to do
Right.
as a writer,
Mhm.
just read on the page. And for me, writing Darlings was so much fun because all I had to do was unpack my life. Like I've been a career writer since I was 4 years old. My first professional payment as a writer was when I was 16. And I've been doing nothing but writing and teaching, as you mentioned, and sort of doing writing adjacent things ever since. And so for this book, all I had to do, as opposed to historical fiction, which you have to research for 10 years for every book, is go into my study and unpack the weird, wonderful suitcase of writer life that I've been carrying around for years, for
Yeah,
decades.
yeah.
And just like, let readers know what it's really like to be on book tour, to be struggling for an idea, to be under contract, to work with an agent, to work with an editor, and to be murderously ambitious, which a lot of us are, or envious, or to fall in love with another writer, which happens in the novel. And I have to say, like, it was such a relief to put this all down on the page and share it with an audience. And also, I thought it was hilarious. And I snort laughed on like every single page. Like, every time I put my hands on the keyboard, I would start laughing immediately because our life is just so funny and it's so weird.
Mhm.
Very much so. Very much so. Now, what would you tell a young writer in terms of they're going along, they're writing the genre that they enjoy or think they enjoy, and then they want to make a change? Is there something that you would recommend to a younger writer in terms of how to pivot?
Great, great question. I don't know that you can do that as a young writer in some ways. I have watched a lot of my colleagues who are in my novel workshop, which has been running for about 23 years now, and people jump in and jump out as their novels demand. And these are, a lot of them are published, some of them are still aspiring, they're all really talented. But I have watched people work in the same lane for 10, 15, 18 years, and then suddenly try something a little different, and I'm like, oh my god, that's what you should have been writing all along. But I feel like it's almost like, this is what I do tell young writers, you have to master something before you can jump into something else. So
Okay.
I was teaching comp at Boston University and teaching journalism at Boston University, and the kids hated having to learn the rules of grammar. Just, it was so constricting. It was so boring. What is a gerund? Who really cares? And I would say, look at these line drawings. So I'd bring in these line drawings. I would say, who do you think this is? And they would say, oh, it's Matisse or it's Rembrandt. And I would say, it's Picasso. And before Picasso invented Cubism, he had to learn how to draw realistically. So I think we perfect our craft in one, or and as much as anybody can do that, we practice our craft in one lane that we're comfortable with. And then at some point, we may have an invitation to jump out, and suddenly something clicks and you go, oh, that's maybe where you should have been. And it feels like such a gift in midlife to do that.
I saw that 30 years ago in the Boston poetry scene where there were all these younger poets that were just jumping out, and I don't follow anybody, and and it's like, here I was, and I was based in metrics, prosody, sonnets, Shakespearean, Spenserian, all those kind of things, and then I could break through. I think that's a valid point. Be good at something, and then say, I'm going to break it up now. I'm going to tear it to shreds.
Right. And I think that what you're really tearing to threads is your own idea of yourself, maybe as a writer, or your career in some ways. Like, I didn't set out to suddenly write contemporary fiction. I never set out to write a thriller. I never set out to write a memoir either. That was something that I felt like I had to do
Well, yeah.
because of my conscience and my heart. And that was a lovely thing, but I don't intend to write more memoirs. I do intend to write more thrillers. I love them. And in some ways, it's not as much of a jump for me as people might think, because all of my books have death in them. All of my books have sex in them. I'm just going from writing 1940s era fiction to writing contemporary fiction. And my agent, who is French, and she's so great, it terrifies me. And I was so scared to bring her this manuscript. Initially, I bought her a third of it. And was supposed to be writing historical fiction that my editor had signed off on. And I really tried. I had this great idea for historical fiction, and it was so wooden and just so I could not breathe life into it at all. And so I started working on Darlings, and I brought my agent the book and waited on, tenterhooks for a week for her to get back to me. And then she called me and she was like, Jenna, I think this is the smartest thing you have ever done, because this is your voice now, and you are taking the gloves off. And when you were writing historical fiction, it was like you hide behind a costume of that history, but now you can let your own voice loose on the page. And I felt very empowered by that, and not having to sort of translate my Jenna voice into the more restrained and austere tone I try to use for historical fiction means that there was so much bounciness on the page and so much energy on the page in Murder Your Darlings. And I hope readers really love it, and I hope they laugh, and I hope they feel energized and can't put it down.
What is your process when you start kind of something new? How do you go from kind of the idea shaking around in your head to actually getting it down on paper? Do you tend to plot? Do you kind of just start writing to see where it takes you?
Yeah, great question, Viking. And the way you described it, kind of shaking the ideas around in my head, I do that for a couple of years, to be honest. Like, I feel as though I walk around with marbles rolling around in my head, and the marbles are book ideas. And then some of them kind of like disappear down mouse holes. And those are the books that are not meant to be written. And it kind of takes time for them to shake down. But the ones that stay rolling around in my head, one of these days, I'm just going to sit down and bang out a scene. And if it has the necessary juice and the electricity, then I do build a scaffolding of plot. I am not a pantser. I am a total plotter. I will have an outline on the wall in my study. I will revise that outline, 11 or 12 times, no exaggeration, as the book evolves. So for people who are like, how can you write from an outline that's so constricting? It's really not, I promise you, like, it is a very fluid process, but I have container store brain. I like to know where I'm going. I like to have that blueprint. So I sit down and plot it out, and then I write chronologically. I always know the last scene, I always know the last line, and it's just a matter of clawing my way across the rest of the barren desert of the book to get to that last line. But even still, there are great surprises. Like Murder Your Darling
Right.
was supposed to be told from the point of view of one person and is told from the point of view of three narrators.
Hmm.
Two out of those three surprised me greatly. So,
And sometimes we have characters that take over a story and run
Right.
with it. So, yeah.
Or go in a direction that we didn't originally intend them to go, as far as that goes.
Stay tuned, my friends. We will be back in 2 weeks to continue our interview with Jenna Blum. Until then, read a book. Tikiman and the Viking podcast brought to you by Rumination of Thunder Media. The following intro and outro music was used for this media project. The music Find Them by Alexander Nakrata. Free download from filmmusic.io. License Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International.